I want to switch gears if I can, and I want to do two things, an Old Testament and a New Testament passage about the same thing. They're mirror images or two-side mirrors at the same vanity, okay? This is how to heal breaches and move from conflict to peace. Now, the specific story, the backstory here is going to be Jacob is going home. So as Rachel and Leah are going with him, would you be open to the idea they don't know what you know? They don't know the Jacob that was before he lay his head on the rock. They don't know the old Jacob. They also don't know big and hairy back home, Esau. Because big and hairy, he can shoot you dead. Okay? So here's Mr. Hunter. Now, I want you to be open to something else, though. Esau doesn't know Jacob anymore. He knows the Jacob that was, not the one that is. He knows the trickster, not the one who had the snot beat out of him because he got tricked by his own father-in-law. He doesn't recognize a Jacob that's met God. So this is a classic situation where somebody from your past life, we would say the BC days, the before Christ days of your life, they think they know you, but they don't know the you that's you now. They just know the you that was. Zoe, was it you who posted your old Facebook posts? That was you? I didn't know you could do that. I had never seen that done before. But isn't it interesting to go back a few years and look at the path behind you and then realize, thankfully, I'm not who I was. You're not who you're going to be, but you're not who you were. And you can look back. All of us can look back on some moments in our life and things we said and did and go, that's going to leave a mark. And it did. Now, drop your eyes into 31:14, because the passage we're going to do is 31:14 to 55. And what I'm trying to get here is, how do I move 7 steps from conflict all the way into a position of peace? I want to do the balance of chapter 31 and see if we can't find that. Let me give you 7 steps that I picked up on. They're not the inspired 7 steps. They're just what I saw here. Maybe you're going to see something different, or you'll have 8 steps or 6, or your blog post will be better. That's fine with me, okay? First, I want you to notice in 14 to 17, what I call step 1. We have to come to a decision point to change the situation. Or as simple as this, decision to change, okay? Decision to change, that's 14 to 17. Look what it says. Rachel and Leah said to him, "Do we still have any portion of inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned to him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has also entirely consumed our purchase price." See, first thing that happens is they recognize the hopelessness to try and work it out. That's verses 14 and 15. It's hopeless for them to try and work it out with him. Why? Everything in his past has demonstrated that he's going to be out for him. Guys, you should try as best as you can to work out things with people, but you are going to run into people that you are not going to work them out with. Why? Because they don't want to. They like the way they live. Not everybody you witness to is going to go, "Yes, I need Jesus." Some are going to go, "You're a nut." Okay? And you can stand there and try to argue, but you're not going to argue them into the kingdom. And you can stand there and accommodate, and you're not going to accommodate them into the kingdom because they don't want to do it. People have 4 fundamental emotional needs. One of them is they need to have a sense of purpose. One of them is that they need to have the feeling of safety. One of them is that they need to feel valued. And one of them is that they need a level of control of their circumstances. Stop and think about yourself. What you need is a purpose, a certain amount of safety. You need people to value you and to feel valued. And you need some level of control of your circumstances. Some of you need a much greater level of control just to stay healthy. Some of you are neurotic about control and cannot stand others being in control. The bottom line is that if you lack any of those, you'll lash out. Listen to me very carefully. When people lash out at you, it will be because they don't understand the purpose, they don't feel safe, they don't feel valued, or they don't feel in control. That will be the reasons. I use this all the time in counseling. Why are they upset? Is it that they don't feel like life is in control? The greatest reason there's marriage conflict is that one party or the other doesn't feel in control, and feels like there isn't control in the situation. If you marry somebody and you don't know what they're going to do next, you feel like life is out of control. And you're responsible for the mess they make, but life is out of control. The frustration with raising toddlers is they have their own order to things. It's usually scattered all over the floor. And so their life is out of control to some degree, and you have to monitor and deal with that. Okay. Bottom line is this. When a God-given need is fulfilled in an ungodly way, it causes greater guilt and distance from God. Stop and think about what I'm saying. When a God-given need is fulfilled in an ungodly way, mention one. What is a God-given need that you have in your life that you could fulfill in an ungodly way?
Identity.
I'm sorry?
Identity.
Identity? Relationships. So we need to feel valued. The girl wants to feel valued. She sleeps with him and she doesn't feel valued. She feels guilt. Because she thought that physical relationship would keep him on the hook and she would be valued. That's not the way to get value. A godly need in an ungodly fulfillment. Identity. I have a need to understand who I am and my purpose in life, and if I try to fulfill it through someone else as opposed to from the Lord, I now have it from the wrong direction, and what I'll have is guilt and distance from God, not intimacy with God. When a God-given need is fulfilled in an ungodly way, it will produce guilt and distance from God. Let me say it this way. Righteous needs need to be righteously fulfilled. That is, there's nothing wrong with you having needs in your life. Everybody here needs a sense of purpose. Everybody here needs to be safe. Everybody needs to be valued. Everybody here needs to have a certain amount of control in what they're doing. But when you try to get those values played out in an ungodly or unrighteous way, it will create more guilt and distance from God, and that will hurt you. Don't fight, but I have a need for that. That's the wrong battle. It's not whether or not you have the need. It's whether or not the need is being fulfilled in a godly way. That's the battle. Okay? Now, here's the bottom line. In verse 16, they saw God's hand in making a move in another direction. And so this is all part of the first step, the decision to change. How do you know that the decision to change is real? Well, first of all, you realize that trying to stay and work it out isn't going to work. And then you start to feel inside yourself like God's hand is moving us in another direction. And I see that in verse 16. Surely all the wealth which God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. They are echoing in his life. It's time for you to make a change. We're okay with it. And then in verse 17, they had a purposeful move to another place. It says, Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels. He drove away with all the livestock and all his property which he had gathered, his acquired livestock which he had gathered in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Now, the first step of making it from conflict to peace is making the decision that you're going to go back and face the problem. I want you to understand that in 31:14 to 17, it sounds like he's running from Laban, but that's not what he's doing. He's running into the mouth of the lion, not away from it. Because Rachel and Leah only know they're going back to the land of his fathers. Hey, we're going on a trip. We've never been there. How exciting. What they don't know is what waits behind is the old wounds of the past. And so Jacob, there's nothing in the scripture that says Jacob has made them aware of what he was like or what he had done. All we know is that they're heading back, and it's not going to... Would you be open to the idea that Jacob isn't feeling the same way about the journey home as the girls are? The girls are looking at the anticipation of a new circumstance. Jacob is dreading the reality of the past circumstance. Now, second step. First one is we have to come to the decision point. The second step, and I'm going to get this from verses, let's pick up 19 to 24. The second step is, even when we try to balance the account by taking what we feel is ours, which by the way is an ungodly response, we have to let God's word change us. In other words, as we're leaving, you want to get from conflict into peace. It can't just be about vengeance. It can't just be about they've cheated me, so I'm taking all the pencils from the office when I leave. They underpaid me 2 hours. Well, that's fine. I'm taking the whole copy paper out the door with me because that's just wrong. That's not how you do it. So one of the things we do in verse 19 is we try to avenge ourselves. That's a way of gaining control. By the way, revenge is about control. If you don't know that, write it down. Revenge is about control. You go after revenge because you feel somebody took control of what was yours, and you're going to get it back. And it's a very fundamental, ungodly way to match a godly value. You should have a certain amount in your control in your life, but some things are not in your control. And when you try to gain control over other people because you feel that they've in an ungodly way gained control over you, you are now using vengeance. Vengeance belongs to the Lord, not to you. So verse 19 says, when Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. Okay, let's just stop here. What she stole were the teraphim. The teraphim, obviously with the em ending, it means it's plural, cherubim, okay? It's the masculine. Teraph is a small doll, essentially. And in the case of the people that lived in Padan Aram, apparently these dolls had something to do with fertility. Now, fertility wasn't all about wives. It was also about flocks and herds. And so you would worship a god of fertility. That was very, very common. In Rachel's case, she had a deep need to be sure that her husband's rights as an adopted son were not violated. So she stole the teraphim as a way of getting insurance for later, a retaliation for Laban's trickery. So she plays out his trickery and takes revenge on him by stealing his household future hope of expanding his flocks and expanding his herds. Why? Because she felt like she got treated like one of them. Look at verse 20. One of the things that we can do is pull away without confrontation to get peace on our own terms. Can I just tell you something? They were doing the wrong thing. Rachel stole something. Did we all agree that was wrong? And what she stole was a symbol of his future prosperity. Now you can go, it's a household god, it's idolatry. Well, yeah, but that's only one piece of the problem. The other thing, it doesn't necessarily say she even believes in it, but she's stealing a symbol that belongs to the family. It's like a crest. It's like a wreath of something of their past. She's stealing a symbol that was meaningful to him. You could say, well, Rachel's actually helping because technically she's ridding him of idolatry. That's not what she's trying to do. She's not trying to grow his spiritual life. She's trying to take something from him. Like, ha! You did this to me, treated me like cattle? Well, fine. But there's something else. Jacob is trying to leave town without having a discussion with Laban because they have concluded that Laban won't listen. Listen to me. Just because you conclude it's not going to work doesn't mean you don't have the discussion. You're not allowed to pre-conclude that the other person isn't going to listen to you so you don't talk. You have to say it, then they don't listen to you, then you have said it. Sometimes the checklist of what you have to do to make peace is a checklist of one side. Too many words. Abby finds herself in a position where somebody is at a breach in the relationship. She feels that they've said mean things to her and that they need to make it right. She goes back and she says, look, I've tried to live at peace with you, but you've said some very mean things. They then, instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, as she anticipates they're going to do, turn it around to 5 more mean things they can say and reasons why she deserved to hear them in the first place. Well, you know, if your hair wasn't like that, and you didn't dress like that, and you didn't smell like that, and you didn't, you know, and all of a sudden they're loading her down. And so she walked into it expecting them to turn and soften, and instead they turned the other way and hardened and dumped more on her. Was she wrong for going to them? No. Would it have been wrong for her to withdraw in hurt and pain and never deal with them? That would have been wrong. That's what Jacob did with Esau. Running away doesn't solve anything. But then you go, well, wait a minute, Randy, I don't get it. Because she walked in and she shared with the other person and it didn't work. You check it off your list because you were told to do it, not because it works. It's not good just because it works. It's good because it's what you're supposed to do. You do right not to get right. You do right to fulfill what God told you to do. And if you're looking for a place for that, Matthew 18 says when somebody causes sin against you or is offensive to you, you go to the person. Jesus didn't say run away, he said go to them. And if they don't listen, take somebody else with you. And if they don't listen, then there'll be a body of people that will make judgment on the issue. The point is, you don't solve things by running away. Jacob is trying to run. Rachel is trying to run. Leah's trying to run. That's wrong. Look at verse 20. How do I know it's wrong? Look at the way the Bible says it. Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he was fleeing. There it is. It's wrong to run away and act like you're not running away. It's wrong. You don't just not show up for work one day, and that's how you quit. Because that leaves a bad testimony behind for you. You don't just go, I'm not getting along with that person in ministry, so I'm just not going to do it anymore. I was a volunteer anyway, so I'm just not going anymore. That's not how you fix it. You don't just go, you know what? They offended me at that church, so I'm just not going back. That's not how you fix it. It is wrong for you to run away. The right thing to do is have the honest discussion with people. But what about if they tear me apart? Then walk away torn apart. But then you have said it. Then it's done. No one's going to whisper, well, she really left because, well, they might, but they'll be lying. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and he crossed the Euphrates River. He set his face toward the hill country of Gilead, which is on the, what's it now, Jordan. It's on the east side of the Jordan River. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him at a distance of 7 days' journey, and he overtook them in the hill country of Gilead. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream of the night and said, be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. What does that mean? Calm down, don't raise your voice. Be careful that you judge anything about this. I know you, Laban, and I know the kind of manipulator you are. Don't turn this situation. Don't. God gets him to back off before he ever says anything. But here's what I want you to see. From Jacob's side, Jacob was wrong. You can't pull out of a confrontation on your own terms. Did anybody ever, you might have had this experience, did anybody ever get in an argument with somebody and they said all their things and then said, I'm done, I don't want to hear anything? They got to pummel you with their argument, you don't get the answer. Anybody ever have one of those? I hate those kind of discussions. Either don't tell me what's wrong with me or let me have an answer, okay? And by the way, this is one of the great manipulations people, fine, it's just me. Fine, whatever, it's just me. Yeah, I'm totally wrong. They don't believe that. They're trying to shut you down. It's a manipulation. And you have to go back and say, stop manipulating and start communicating. Okay? Because what we need to do is discuss what's really going on here, not get you to strong-arm me and get me backed up. It's manipulation, not communication. Okay, when you get to verse 25 to 30, let me give you step 3. Okay, what's step 1?
We have to make a decision to change.
Okay, nothing changes till you decide. And when you make the decision, that's the beginning. What's step 2?
Don't avenge yourself.
Yeah, don't run, don't avenge. That's not what you're supposed to do. What are you supposed to do? If you're not supposed to do that, what are you supposed to do?
Make peace.
Do what you can to make peace. Now, when you don't do that, in this case, God turned it about and made it happen. So in verses 25 to 30, step 3 is try to find neutral ground. Forcing recognition of problems in a fair way is going to work, but or has a better chance of working. If you don't get to fair ground, neutral ground, what you don't do is walk into the room surrounded by people who hate you and let the person rail on you. That's not neutral ground. That's very unhealthy for you and them. So it says, Laban caught up with Jacob. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me so that I might have sent you away with joy and with songs, with timbrel and with lyre? Does anybody think that's what he would have done?
No.
Liar, maybe, but not that kind. And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly. Is it not in my power to do you harm? But the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. Now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? He said, listen, I get it. You're going away and you see your future. Why are you taking my future with you? He seems much more direct about his wounds. And he sets aside all the deals and the benefits. He goes right to it. Remember that users are always about themselves. Laban never fails to mention something that is about him. Every time he opens his mouth, the world is all about what's happening to him. He doesn't really, I mean, he puts a few other people in there to decorate it, but really it's about him, okay? So, step 3, look for neutral ground. Step 4, I want you to allow all the sides to get their points out. Everybody needs to say what they need to say. No communication happens when only one side gets to dump the truck on the other one and the other one's buried in it, okay? There are discussions, and then there's human vomiting, where the person just gets to vomit their stuff on you and you have to stand there full of it. You don't get to say anything. That's not a discussion. That's not communication. So you allow all the sides to get their points out, exploring the hurt from a variety of sides. I see that in verse 31. Jacob replied to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. Jacob lays his cards on the table and says, I want you to know something. You're right, I left. You're right, I ran out. But I don't trust that you're going to handle things honorably. Why? There was those 10 times you changed my paycheck. I don't see you as the kind of person I can rely on. I didn't know what you were going to do, so I took off. The one with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. It's clear that Jacob is trying to go back and clear his past, not create more problems. But the bad decisions of Jacob's past are now mirrored in the bad decisions of Rachel's present. She's making really stupid choices. Now, you allow both sides to express and explore the ideas of hurt and deception. Both of them are there. Look at verse 33. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the 2 maids, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt through all the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, let my lord not be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of woman is upon me. So he searched, but he did not find her household goods. She said, it's my time of the month and I can't get up. Okay, apparently he bought that. But here's the reality. She's lying through her teeth. So in addition to being a deceptive person by stealing, she is now lying to him. And in reality, this is only going to cause problems in the future. You don't create honesty by telling lies. You don't create stability by telling lies. But the point that I'm making is allow all the sides to get their grievances out. So he searches the tent and he did not find the household idols. All right, step 5. Step 5 in 36 to 42 is this. Face the source of the frustration and expose the facts that are underlying the relationship. In other words, cards on the table. Get the past out. Put it on the table. Say what you need to say. Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. And Jacob said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found in all your household goods? Set it here between my kinsman and your kinsman, that we may decide between the two of us. These 20 years I've been with you. So now you know how long it's been. It's been 20 years. Esau and Jacob parted. It's been 20 years since the death of their father Isaac. It's been 20 years of trouble away from them. 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes, your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the ram of your flocks. I haven't taken any of your future. Ram equals future. Why?
They're male.
Stud animals. Stud animals are more important than the female animals, not because one's male and one's female, but because one will produce many others. And so the stud animals are the ones that you hang on. He says, I never took anything from you. I've been 20 years with you. I haven't done anything wrong. Look at verse 41. These 20 years I've been in your house. I've served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. There it is. He says it directly to him. You have not been an honorable person. You walk into my tent and you accuse me of stealing something. You found nothing. But I can turn around and show you 10 times you changed my paycheck. So stop dealing with me like you've been so wounded, because I'm going to tell you there's another side to this story. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been for me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, so he rendered judgment last night. The reason you're not allowed to talk and the reason God spoke to you is because he knows you've been lying to me. He knows you've been jacking around my paycheck. And the bottom line is now you know it too. You can mess with me, but you're not going to mess with the God who you dreamed about last night, because he is there. How does Jacob have such confidence that there is a spiritual world behind the physical? Because the latter experience burned it into his heart. So what you see coming out of Jacob is the one lesson where God met him. Don't mess with me because there's a God behind me. Don't mess with me because there's a spiritual world behind this one. You know you've been dishonorable. Now Jacob is a little bit uppity, but he doesn't know that Rachel has a stolen thing sitting underneath of her. Okay, step 6. I want you to recognize the value of the relationship is greater than the need to win. This is terribly important. Recognize the value of the relationship is more important than the need to win. As a believer, whenever you think you need to win and that's more important than the relationship, you totally miss your ability to be a testimony. Do you know how many believers are out there arguing with people in the name of Christ, and really it's about their ego and their need to win? It's really not about Jesus at all. It's not about the lostness. It's not about them facing a Christless eternity. It's not about a broken heart for souls. It's about, you're not going to win. That's arrogance. That's all that is. Stop worrying about winning. You don't argue somebody into a win. Listen, one of the things you can do, one of the great skills you can learn, is when you're tempted to win the argument, shut up. That's a great skill to learn. Graciously hand over to the other person, I don't want to argue with you because you mean more to me than the argument. That's a great line, by the way. And the people that don't accept that line, then they were never your friend to begin with. Learn this line. You mean more to me than any argument we might have. How about this one? It matters to me that I hurt you. What matters to me more than whether or not I said this or I was right or whether I was wrong was that it hurt you. I could have been right about what I said. It doesn't matter to me. You mean more to me than winning. What's interesting is Laban replied to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Then Jacob took a stone. What's interesting is what Laban said is, everything you have is really mine. Is that true? No, it's not true. But Jacob took a stone, set up a pillar, and Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stone, and they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Remember that in the Bible, there's something called a meal covenant. You do not eat with someone in the Bible unless you have a relationship with them. You don't sit next to a person in a diner stool and eat in the Middle East. Years ago, when the Palestinians and the Israelis came to an agreement, Yasser Arafat was at the time the prime minister or head of the Palestinian people, and he sat down with Yitzhak Rabin, who was the head of the Israeli people, and on the front page of the Washington Post was the two of them shaking hands, but on the front page of the Jerusalem Post was the two of them eating lunch together. It's not a handshake, it's whether they ate together. Okay? Remember, what did the Pharisees object to with Jesus? Why do you eat with publicans and sinners? We understand why you talk to them. Why are you eating with them? Psalm 23. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Means he makes me able to make peace with my enemy and eat a meal with them. A meal covenant is when... Do you remember that after this one, do you remember that John 21? Do you remember that the night in which Jesus was betrayed, what happened to Peter? Anybody remember? What happened to Peter? When Jesus got arrested, what happened to Peter? What's the next story about Peter?
Betraying Jesus.
Yeah, he goes with John up to the house of Caiaphas, and 3 times he says, I don't know the man, I don't know the man, I don't know the man. Then the rooster crows and he runs out and weeps bitterly. The next time you see Peter, he says, I'm going fishing. And he goes up to the Sea of Galilee and Jesus appears to them. And what does Jesus do on the shore? He cooks a meal so that Peter can do what? Eat breakfast with him. And the point is not that he forgave Peter. He already did that. The point is the other men needed to see him eating together with Jesus. It's okay. Yes, he blew it, but it's okay. He's forgiven. So in the Bible, look for meals, because meals are a symbol of something. Covenants are sealed at meals. Eating together is a thing. Okay? So here's the thing. When I look at this, it says, and Jacob took a stone, set it up as a pillar, his kinsmen gathered stones. Now Laban called it Yegar Sahadutah, but Jacob called it Gal'id. What's going on here? This heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore it was named Galid and Mitzpah. What is that? It's the word for witness, or the word for a witnessing of a covenant or swearing in ceremony. So it says he named the place a place where there's witness of the covenant. And in the middle of all of this, you have all these very strange words that come up. Yegar Sahadutah is Aramaic, and it's the word for the heap of stones of testimony. That's what it means. Big pile of stones where a testimony is. Okay? Or monument. Heap of stones equaling monument. That's what that word means. But in the case of Gal'id, it's the word for a witness pile. A pile of witness. And in the case of the word Mitzpah, it's a name of a place, but it has to do with probably a place to mark a treasured moment in someone's life. Okay? And he says, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, God is a witness between you and me. Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap of this pillar to me for harm. In other words, this is the boundary. We will never come armed to go get the other person past this point. If we have a dispute with one another, how will we handle it? We'll both come back here, right here, to this rock. We'll come back and we'll make it right. We will find a way to bury this and make it right. Verse 53 says, the God of Abraham, God of Nahor, God of their father, judged between us. Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain, called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. So here's the point. Jacob started this by hearing Laban say a series of things that weren't true, and Jacob didn't try to correct him. Why? Because he wanted the relationship not to be right. And if being right is your most important thing, you will find yourself breaking relationships left and right. The grace to know that you're right and not have to prove it is an important thing. Let me go on and let's finish this up with the end of it. Here's the 7th one. 31:55. We have to release the other party to move on. We have to release the other party to move on with their lives. They have to have the ability to move on. Listen to me. Fixated people are unproductive and dangerous. Do you know anybody that a year after they broke up are still fixated on the relationship? Stalker. A little bit weird. Fixated people are dangerous people. They're also unproductive. The more time you remain stuck in the mud over something you can't fix in somebody else, the more time you're doing nothing but spinning your wheels in the mud. So It says, early in the morning, Laban rose, kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them, and Laban departed and returned to his place. Peace isn't dependent upon everything being restored. Listen to me. Peace in your life with somebody else is not dependent upon everything being restored, everything being repaired, everything being replaced. Did you know that you can forgive somebody that doesn't want to forgive you? By the way, if you don't forgive them, you're giving them power over your life. Every moment you carry a bitterness, you let somebody who wounded you in the past have power today. But if I simply say, you know what? Whether they were wrong or not, I forgive them. It's over for me. I won't fight on my side. I lay it down. You have broken their hold on your heart. Every moment you let them have a hold on your heart, you give them another day. Why? Why are you doing that? I think God used this restoration to prepare Jacob for what was coming. And in our next time together, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find Jacob not meeting Esau, but Jacob meeting God first, then meeting Esau. Why? Because although Jacob had repaired a lot of things in his life, there was still something else. Too much of Jacob was left in Jacob, and not enough of God was replacing who Jacob was. So we're going to see that in the next hour.